Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for waiting patiently for tonight's session. We are back here on the Erasmus Expeditions with this momentum camp. I just hit the mute button instead of the button to start my music for some stupid reason. It's been a long week for this Wednesday already, in case those of you who don't live in the U.S. Are unaware somehow. Episode 21 of this momentum campaign titled The Vestibule of Hell. I'm very excited to be getting to this point in the campaign. Things are rounding the corner on the last leg of our story, our saga, and I'm really happy with what is in store. So I'm going to pass things over to my players so that they can introduce themselves, plug anything that they would like to plug, etc. And we will get started. But before I pass things over to them, I will go ahead and warn you, because some of them have a potty mouth. If mature language is something that bothers you and mature subject matter is something that gets under your skin, click off of this channel. Do not watch this game or any other game that's on this channel. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and start with Jake.
Hey everybody, I'm Jake from Mini Terrain Domain, and that's where you can usually find me, over on the Mini Terrain Domain Twitch channel, or on the YouTube channel, where we run a ton of D&D, and we're branching out with Big Bearded Nerd, which is an official MTD channel where we run a lot of our non-D&D content, and we're also honored to have such amazing players as Jeremy in our regular Dawnbringers campaign, and having Alan run a very long-running Curse of Strahd campaign on Friday nights, over 50 sessions now, and we're just honored to be the host to that for Alan and his amazing crew of role players, some of whom are in the chat tonight. Hey, everybody. And I'm going to be continuing playing my character of Katvrad, a Delver dwarf from the region we now find ourselves in, but through her travails has taken on the heart and soul of a bonekin, and has thus changed her name from Katya to Katvrad.
Yes. I cannot wait to finally get back into Dawnbringers Season 5 now. It's been running about the same length as Whispers and Fragments has, about 2 years. I'm really excited for that. Rime of the Frost Maiden, get back to playing Talmud. That's always a fun character to get into the head of. But tomorrow, I get to play a Tortle Druid who is a Circle of the Spores, and I'm really happy with that character and looking very much forward to portraying that.
And I'll be playing another dwarf named Mustard Plug.
Oh, man. Okay. So next up, obviously, Austin will not be joining us this evening. Austin, I hope you're having a wonderful time, and watch this to catch up on what you missed. We're going to miss you. All right, next up, we have Tim.
Hey everybody, I am Tim. I am 1/3 of Tabletop Terrors, and we actually have some cool stuff going on over there. I don't know if we're ready to formally announce it yet. I don't know if that's the thing, but well, I don't know. Jeff, what do you think? Should I spill the beans and just talk about it, or Jeff's probably eating a piece of pizza as I speak.
He's given the go ahead in the chat.
Oh, is he? Okay, yeah. Cool. All right. So, all right. So Tabletop Terrors is going to have a Patreon. And we are going to focus on teaching game design, teaching you how to publish books, teaching you how to format things and be creative, and then also answer very specific in-depth questions that you might have. And so we think between the three of us, we've got a lot of knowledge. And so taking that inspiration and then putting it and channeling it into, okay, what's a creative process that I can actually use? How can I sit down, make a writing schedule? What are some mechanics ideas? What are some things like that? And so that is what we're going to do. That's what we're going to focus on. So we should be launching very, very soon. And if you're interested in either making sure your project gets finished being a game designer, or if you just want a hotline to ask the three of us very in-depth questions and get really good in-depth answers, then this Patreon is for you.
That's fantastic. Now I'm going to feel bad asking you questions outside of, games and stuff.
No. That's the thing we're telling people. That's a great thing. We're still going to answer questions. These are things like, hey, how would you handle a mechanic that is roll under if I'm using this skill system? And we will give you as detailed of an answer as we can, specifically laying out all the different things. So our Q&A isn't going to go away. We don't want people to feel weird asking us questions. This is more like, this is going to be hefty. Your answer is going to be really specific to you, and you want detailed, not just 60 seconds, 120 seconds in a stream or a Facebook post, but you want our full-blown consultative answer on something that you're just stumped with. That's really what it's about.
That's awesome. That's a really good idea. And then, you guys, absolutely. They have premium knowledge over there on Tabletop Terrors. Anybody who mentions a channel or a project that's going on, you should be able to find the link of it in the description of this video down below. And I highly, highly recommend that you go and check them all out. Not only are they fantastic at what they do in whatever creative endeavors that might be, but they're also fantastic human beings. So go out and support them. Give them love. Next up, speaking of fantastic human beings and full of love, Alan.
All right. Hey, power of love. One, I want to say that's awesome coming from Tabletop Terrors, just because I know there are tons of creative RPG people out there in the community, and most of them all have the same question about just how do I get started? Like, how do I start writing, or what should I start writing first? So I think that's great. And like you said, with the knowledge that the three of you guys have, I'm sure that that you guys will be able to pass that knowledge on, and we'll start seeing more creators out there put out their content. But yes, my name is Alan, and you can find me on all the social media platforms out there at CFTRPG. On every other Wednesday, I run a Savage Worlds adaptation of Curse of Strahd on my own Twitch channel, CFTRPG. And then on Fridays, as Jake had mentioned, we have a long-running Curse of Strahd 5e campaign going on, over 50 sessions, and it's been an absolute blast. It's one of the best things about this year, about 2020, is being able to play with those guys every Friday. So you can actually catch us this Friday coming up if you're catching this live now. And make sure to follow on Mini Terrain Domain so that you know when we go live. Outside of that, I'm happy to be back in the world of Momentum and playing Haroon, the Ether elf paladin who has come into possession of a very unique item forged in Hellfire. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out tonight.
Excellent. Always happy to have you, Alan. Yeah, absolutely. Do go check out Curse of Strahd. He's got a fantastic. I hate the term cast, but players, the group of players that he has together is they have fantastic chemistry, and with Alan as the GM, it's hard to go wrong. So yeah, last but most certainly not least, Jeff, if you are lost at sea and done with your pizza.
I am, in fact, not lost at sea, nor am I in possession of pizza, so I'm ready to go.
It's 2 strikes.
Yeah, I'm Jeff. I am also part of Tabletop Terrors, so everything that Tim mentioned about the channel and the Patreon, I will not say again, but know that it counts for me too. So yeah, pay us money or whatever, and we'll do stuff for you. Yeah, I'm playing Darian, rogue trying to reform, who is now being trapped by the ghosts of his past as we venture on further now into hell. Very interested to see how it's going to play out. And yeah, getting ready to get down to things.
Absolutely. And Jeff, you've been on the channel for a long time. I think you've played in not every single campaign that's on the channel, but I think this is your 3rd. I think. Sounds about right.
Yes.
Anyways, so yeah, man, it's always a joy to have you on. You bring your A game every time, just as all the rest of these players do. And I'm very excited. This is a big can of worms that we have this evening, so without further ado, if you guys are ready, we're going to get to it. There is nothing, perhaps, more terrifying than finding oneself on the eve of the unknowable, standing upon the precipice of vast uncertainty. Horrors and monsters that have shown themselves have already given us the tools to face them, the tools to defeat them. But when we know not what we yet will face, fear and doubt fill us with an anxiety that is as endless as the possibilities of the unknown void itself. The unknown breeds desperation. And in that desperation, people will cling to anything they can in order to predict what may happen. Many will even sacrifice a part of themselves, of their dignity or virtue, to secure some measure of control over the outcome of tomorrow. We find ourselves at the edge of this world, the flat expanse of momentum comes to an abrupt halt as the water of the seas of essence cascade over the rim of this world into the beyond, the stars and the void that extend in all directions. At the edge of the world, the ether that flows in this ocean is parted as mist and roils backwards, collecting back into the world and never truly being spent. It's here, on the edge horizon, that the dwarves make their homes. And the particular home that we see right now is the dwarven citadel of Tolmunymir. Its expansive spires and various wings built off in every direction cause it to have this sprawling, almost haphazard look to it. But the truth is that nothing looks haphazard when it's done by dwarven hands. And it's in this citadel that we find the 5 of you. Some of you kind of waiting outside of an alehouse. Katvarad and a friend of hers named Sonia have just exited this alehouse to rejoin the rest of your group. So, what's next? What are you doing?
I turn to Sonia and say, "So, what is next? What are we doing?"
Cheetah. She looks at the rest of your group and she says to you, Kathrad, "You know, it is not very common for a delve to be sanctioned whenever there are non-dwarves involved.
By not common, you mean not done?
It has been
I am
known,
aware of this.
it has been known to happen before, but recently, in fact, the delve that your father led into the Down Under, the person who organized it is a human.
The delve was organized by a human.
He was given permission by the monarch, by the Kimos, the king himself, but there are many who were not very pleased about it.
I can imagine. And yet, permission was given. And my father led them. At great cost.
There are
But
rumors that are whispered that the Kimos knew of this group's intentions, that he helped them along with their purpose for his own gains. If this could be proven, he would be removed as Kimos, and likely be executed. I say this so that we are fully transparent with one another, Kotvarat. I stand to gain much from this. If the Kimos was found wanting, it was to be stripped of his titles. I would be named Kimos in his place.
you would be named.
Much has changed, Katya. Much has changed.
For a moment, I think she would see this sort of glimpse of the younger, more naive Katya that she probably knew better. Sort of spring forward on toes a little bit with excitement and kind of wanting to prod and poke for questions. And there's a surprising amount of restraint suddenly shown. You are right. Much has changed everywhere. You are different. I am different. Everywhere we go, we have seen incredible change. Incredible, but not always great. It does not surprise me what you say, that selfish methods may have been used. Everywhere we go, everywhere that these Colossiahs and their remnants are involved, there are always people compromising who they are or who they were for a greater gain.
If the elders are to be believed, our world is dying, Katya. It is no surprise that those who are left are the ones who are willing to go further.
But at what cost? If the world is already dying, What is there to be gained by picking its bones clean before it is even gone? This is the part I don't understand. When I left here, I didn't even fully believe in the Colossiahs. I mean, I knew of them, but I didn't believe in them as a source of power either once before or having any kind of power now. And now what I see is corruption. The Colossiahs, not the Colossiahs themselves, but what is left of them, their bones. It is so similar to the ether. It becomes a source of addiction for people that have compromised everything. And it is those people in those places of power that seem the most prone to that corruption. I am only just now seeing this, and maybe I should not be surprised that my father has gotten involved in the way he has.
Is an old proverb of our people that say that power is like a hot coal to hold in your hand. Squeeze it tighter and hold on to it for too long. It eats away at you. Changes you.
As she says this, I sort of involuntarily flex my own hand, and she may or may not notice it, but there's just the faintest wisp of shadow that sort of rolls between my fingers as I understand all too well this adage and what she's saying. What about you, Sonia? If we are to go down below and we are to stop what is happening and we see that and are able to prove the corruption and the king is removed, how do we know that you will not be corrupted as well? How do we know that you will not be susceptible to the same coals, to want to hold these coals in your hand?
This is the reason I do not sleep so well. I do have these questions, Katya, and I do not have an answer for you. All that I can say is that I will try my best to be the kind of leader that Tolmunymir needs. Now, here, at the end of more than just the physical world. If you are able to get me placed into the position of Chemos, if we prove that the current Chemos is indeed corrupt, I will do everything that I can to have your delves sanctioned. And, even if it is not, I will still let you use my clan's chimney to make your delve.
I'm still a child in many ways. I've grown a lot since last we saw each other. But I'm only just now beginning to understand my own I don't know what the word is, but my lack of knowledge and experience in the world. But I'm also learning that I don't have to know how everything works on my own. I have friends, non-dwarf friends, humans and bonekin. There's elves and half elves, and they're all so strange and weird and wonderful and somehow broken too in different places. And it's like we've all come from different pieces of broken rocks and been brought together, and our pieces are somehow, they don't fit perfectly, but they fit just good enough that where I don't know how to do certain things, Ingvarad knew. Harun knows. Bastarad knows other things. Sabanos would tell you he knows everything, or at least all of the possible outcomes. Sometimes I think he just guesses and is a lot luckier than most. And weirdly, it doesn't make any sense. But I think in some ways the wisest of them all is Darian. Though there are shadows behind his eyes, but they don't cloud his vision. They help him to see things that even I can't see. And all of this is to say, Sonia, I'm not making an empty promise to you. But I am telling you, not just me, but all of us. Whatever fates, the Colossiahs themselves, whatever it is that has put us on this path, we will find what is right and wrong and do what we can together to make it right. And if that means removing the king and putting you in his place, then that is what we will do.
I have a few doors that I would like for you to talk to. Make up your own mind about whether this is the right course or not. I will go to arrange this if you will meet with them. In time, maybe you will go and see the Kyberic clan hall, or what remains of it. It is disheartening to see, Katya, so steel yourself.
I must go before we go down below. I must go to the Kyberic clan hall. I will brace myself.
The rest of you, I don't know how much Katya has told you, but you should make sure that you're ready. For when you go into the Down Under, you will never come back the same.
I turn around as she addresses everybody, and you just see this change in Katrat's face, and this sort of, she just mouths the words, "Ah, shit." Like she had no idea that everybody was there. She was focused on talking to Sonia as we walked outside.
It is good to meet you. And if Katya says that you are good people, then I believe her. And what she says is true. In fact, you can lean on one another in your weaknesses. This is very good, because where you are going, you will absolutely need to do so. And even then, not all of you may come back. Well then, I will depart. I will meet you again, and then we can see about these are the dwarves who have these rumors. Good luck. With that, Sonia Kaloleva turns and leaves the five of you to your own devices.
All right. What are we going to do now?
It seems that we must do what we can in order to ensure that we are able to continue our journey.
It sounds like we are going to have to talk to some people and see what we can find out about the legitimacy of the delve my father organized.
And perhaps some more information about this human who accompanied your father on this delve.
And I don't know if we'll find anything there, if it's even relevant, but before we go, whether we go with the sanctions or without, I will need to go to the Kyber Glen Hall. I don't know if we'll find anything useful there, but I need to see my clan hall, or what is left of it, before I go down into hell for what could be the last time. But I will do what I can with the help of Sonia and whoever she guides us to go talk to. But I'm not so good at talking to other people and trying to get them to tell me things. I mean, if we have to punch somebody in the head a few times, then yes, I will gladly be able to do that. But I know some of you are better at maybe not punching as much. I'm going to be honest, I kind of want to have to punch somebody.
So, is the plan then maybe to head to the clan hall first?
Have we already done our shopping? I'm kind of hazy on where that happened.
It's happening kind of in between all of this
Okay.
business.
So, well, I mean, unless the others any of you have a reason not to while Sonia is arranging meetings with these other dwarfs, I would very much like to go to the clan hall. It may be easier to do now when the question of a sanction is not imminent. If we are not sanctioned, it may be very difficult for me to go there. So what I'm saying is I'm going to my clan hall. You are all welcome to come if you want to come. But I am going to go there now. And then I
Yes.
just sort of turn and start walking in that direction.
And then Sabanos would follow and say, yes, well, quite. I think that sounds the most interesting. There's probably going to be a lot of conflict. I will certainly be of assistance. Or at least I'll be able to watch from a distance. Oh, that rhymed. Do you know what's interesting about rhymes? And he continues to just kind of ramble on as he's like kind of talking to himself, following Katvarad.
Is it one of those classic shots where it's like a wide distant high shot, but weirdly your voice carries on as if you're right next to the camera still?
Yep. And it's the two of us walking and you hear, oh, the strange thing about rhymes, you know, a real rhyme and a near rhyme is different. You know what I mean? Like all this other stuff.
I love it.
Excellent.
Is Haroon or Darian coming with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why Haroon wouldn't.
Yeah, same.
Okay, cool. So we'll just say that Bastrad is taking care of, kind of the larger share of getting this arranged and whatnot off camera, while
We gave him our shopping list.
Yeah, exactly. He drew the short straw. So while Bastrad is doing that, the four of you, following Katvarad's lead, kind of make your way through the city of Tolmunymir, this dwarven citadel that it's certainly not underground. It's not subterranean, but there is so much stonework and the heights at which they have built these structures makes it feel like you are underground. There are towering geometric shapes that form pillars and columns and archways everywhere you look. And in more places than one, there are decorative waterfalls where the seas of essence are allowed to flow into the interior of the city, forming these rivers that then flow out, presumably. Katvarad, as we near the location of your family's clan hall, the Kybrick clan hall, what is a feature that we see that lets you know that you're getting close?
One of the carvings in throughout these areas where these monolithic arches intermingled with the rough stone of natural formations and the water falling from the from high, there are frequently carvings made into this raw stone. The stone itself isn't turned into a full-on statue, but rather it's sort of a Mount Rushmore-esque, where each clan has carved in something representative of their own clan. And as we get close to where the Kybrick clan hall is, there's a medium-sized natural rock formation that has a sort of jagged spire of rock that twists off at an angle. And this has been carved into exquisite detail of a dwarven woman's arm reaching out and holding a bucket, and is collecting some of the water that's falling down from above. But holes have been carved into the stone so that the water that falls into this bucket then falls in sort of a formation that almost makes it look like intermingling spirals as it continues to cascade down. Only the upper bust from the waist up of this woman is carved into the rock. Knowing that though the water doesn't seem to erode the stone of this bucket, any further carving would probably have been eroded. And locally, people just know this particular statue as the collector.
Any of the rest of you have any additional features that we see in this dwarven city?
You know, seeing this now, I consider myself lucky, for I doubt many elves come down so far. And though many would not admit this, but there is beauty to this. There's a sense of charm, and you feel the weight of the ancestors that these dwarves honor, the history of this place. I look at Caprod. I am honored to call you friend, and you honor me by inviting me into your ancestral home.
She doesn't say anything. She just sort of gives you just a almost shy smile.
I feel like Sabanos would be trying to understand the architecture and the way that this thing was built, and he would have three different hypotheses kind of going at once in terms of how they could have carved it, how many people statistically would have been injured or died, and if it was worth it, or how foolish it is. And so I think that he would actually ask Katvarad, he would say, this statue, this creation, this thing hewn from the stone here, what does it mean to you? What is this worth it?
I look up at you, and just sort of trying to understand where you're going with this. And I just look back over at the statue and look sort of just beyond it where I know the Kybrick clan hall is. And I just look at Sabanos and say, it used to mean home. I'm not sure what it means anymore.
And you would see Sabanos is disarmed by this. This is not the answer that he was expecting. and he thinks of his home, which plummeted and shattered, and he understands that in a way that he wasn't expecting. He was looking for logic and calculations and facts, and without doing it on purpose, you snuck past all of that and pricked his heart. And he has a quick vision of his family. And then, alarmed by this himself, he sort of, yes, I quite understand.
It is always strange coming back to a place that you knew so well and finding yourself very different when you're there. It feels simultaneously so familiar and yet unlike anything you've ever been to. That's how I felt back when we were on that island. I know what it feels like to be home and not home.
It is very peculiar to be standing here when I was never certain I was ever going to come back. And yet, here we are.
It's at that moment that a cart comes wheeling around the corner, being pulled by several dwarves. And on its back, there is a rather large decorative stone archway. It only takes Kadvrad an instant to recognize it. The other three of you only recognize it for what it is as it begins to pass by you, and you can see chiseled into the face of this archway in large block letters the name Kyberik.
There's a moment of the familiar to the others flash of classic Katya anger. And I think maybe even Harun or Darian would notice the shadows that for a split second start to swirl in Katvarad's eyes. And I hold my hand up, and you just see the beginning wisps of smoke looking like liquid light starting to form into the hilt of some sort of weapon. And then as quickly as that happens, there's just a shaking of the head and a quick wave of the hand, and it just disperses. And rather than going after these dwarves, I instead start running towards where the clan hall is.
You round that final corner of buildings into the courtyard, if you will, outside of your family's clan hall. And what you see is scaffolding and a team of laboring dwarves systematically removing pieces of your ancestral clan hall. Carvings, statues, doors, sconces. It all seems to be either in piles out front, being organized and readied for sale, or is currently being removed. And you can see that there is a particular dwarf who seems to kind of be the foreman of this work. He's kind of shouting orders here and there in Dwarven.
I imagine just sort of continuing to run into the center of all of this deconstruction before stopping and just standing in one place and slowly turning around and looking at all of these pieces, mostly dismantled, but seeing also as I turn, if you were to look through Kotfarad's eyes, you sort of begin to see the hall for what it once was. As just for a moment, I remember where the statues were, where the carvings were, and the archways, and even beyond that, where the wooden furniture and the bookshelves and the workbenches and anything that was in this place. As I turn around looking, it just seems to all sort of coalesce into what it once was. And then just as quickly, it just seems to vanish in that same sort of cloud of smoke and shadow that Katfarad uses to summon with her innate abilities. And once again, Darian would probably be the quickest, and maybe Haroon even, to see the look that comes over Katfarad's face and her posture is that naive teenage girl that set out on this quest so long ago, yet not so long ago. And you would see her involuntarily fighting back tears. And then this slumped-shouldered look of defeat, seeing what was once the ancestral hall of the clan Kybrick is all but gone. And that's where she is right now, just standing there in the midst, kind of periodically glancing around, not sure what to fixate on, what to look at. Not even sure if she's looking for anything in particular.
The rest of you, as you kind of watch from a little bit of a distance, maybe just kind of on the edge of this courtyard, you watch Kotvarad have this moment. Are you allowing her space? Are you just kind of giving her time to process what's going on? Or is there anything that you're saying or doing?
I think seeing the look on Kotvarad's, sorry, Darian would, excuse me, would walk up next to her and just kind of see the look, and understanding that there was probably some processing to do. Would just put a hand on her shoulder knowingly, kind of like give her a glance and just nod in a quiet understanding of the situation, before kind of like turn his back to her, not in a dismissive way, but in like a "I'll let you do what you need to do" sort of way. Kind of take a couple steps back and kind of let her lead if there's going to be any conversation.
So, go ahead.
It was never the grandest of the halls. It was never a palace, but it was where I learned so much of who I am or who I was. It was where my father taught me how to wield my first tools. Over there used to be a bench, and the shelves that lined that wall, and high up were our father's tools, and down lower were the tools he had made for me, and he would teach me. I would stand on a stone step opposite the bench from him, and I would mimic his moves as he took raw stone and showed me how to read the stone and to feel it for the veins of iron and precious metals, the different sounds, smells, and even tastes of iron, gold, copper, silver. He was a master craftsman in my eyes. And maybe he was, for really, genuinely, a master crafter at one time. But as I got older, I began to see his hands shaking. I began to see the paler skin. And when I was no longer an innocent child, I saw the signs of the ether addiction. But I still loved him. And so did Mother. She gets real quiet when she says Mother.
And I think, Katharad, it's in that moment of quiet contemplation, mentioning your mother, that it dawns on you that when a clan hall like this is dismantled, when a clan's vein has run dry, that the death halls aren't touched. The tombs where the dwarves have their gathered wealth placed and then their bodies placed inside of for eternity after. Unless those tombs, those death halls, are empty for so long. You know that your father had a death hall that was already under construction, as did your mother. And under the terms and the speed at which you left home, you never saw your mother placed in her death hall.
I think with this realization, Darian would sort of hear as Godfarad is seeing this. And as I say, and so did Mother. And then Darian, you would feel a tensing in the shoulder muscles as my posture changes. Mother. And then just kind of casting a look around, what should have been familiar is sort of rendered disorienting because of the dismantling. So it takes a moment to kind of, and then I take off running in the direction of where this death hall would be.
I think Darian, seeing that, would be kind of caught off guard by the sudden dash, and kind of like stumble back for a second to like confuse what was happening. But then seeing Katvarad move to run, would sort of pick up and do a light jog just to make sure she doesn't get too far. I'm not sure exactly what's causing the sudden movement.
Yeah, Harun would follow.
Yeah, same. Especially with seeing Darian following, and with this sort of respect and connection I'm growing with Catbrod, I would follow after. I certainly would not jog, but I would speed walk briskly.
And there's dwarven laborers are kind of shouting, all kinds of things at you as you're all moving past them, telling you to move out of the way, to be careful in certain places. Kotvarad, though everything here is in disarray and somewhat different, it's still familiar to you. This place was your home for a long time. So you're able to navigate some of these new hazards and dangers and make your way into the clan hall and down to the floors beneath that form the spaces, the wings where these death halls are. You round the corner to your family's branch off of this main corridor, and you can see a group of dwarves, 3 of them, standing outside of the door to your mother's death hall. The door to your father's death hall is wide open and has many items already categorized and placed outside. But your mother's door is still closed, and the 3 of them seem to be discussing something just outside of it.
Without hesitation, I run right up to them.
One of them, the best dressed dwarf of the bunch, he's wearing very fine clothes and a ring on each finger, as well as on each of the braids in his beard. His beard is very well groomed. It looks to be oiled and perhaps perfumed. He kind of looks down at you. Can I help you?
What is going on here?
He kind of looks to his 2 compatriots as if the gall of you. I own this place. It's mine. So I will ask you again, what are you doing here?
I am Katya. Now Katvrad. Kybrik. And this is my mother's death hall.
Katvarad, you said. Forgive me. I did not know that there were still living members of the Kybrik clan.
Well, there is. And I am her.
Well, I think that you will find the deed is perfectly in order and lawful. Your father sold this clan hall. It's now my property. Everything in it, except for the death halls that are occupied. Those will not be touched, you have my word. But these 2 empty halls, everything that is in them by right is now mine.
You have not touched anything on the other side of this door?
He kind of turns to look at the door that you're indicating. No, it is empty, as I said, but There is much wealth in here. We must be careful with how we unload it.
What do you mean it is empty?
The body for this death hell has not been placed. It's unclaimed.
The body was never placed in the... Where?
Do you know who should be laid to rest here?
Let's say I don't. Tell me.
Not know. That's why I have asked you. I assume that this was Sergei's, and he points to the open door across the wall, across the hall. So, perhaps this was a death hole for his late wife. He kind of raises a bushy eyebrow in your direction.
And why is she not there?
I do not know.
Where is she?
I'm not certain, but perhaps you should check the chain yard.
Very well. I turn and then I stop. And I begin looking over all of the stuff that's being cataloged and that came out from Sergei's. And you said there's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, essentially all of the wealth that was accumulated by your mother or your father is placed here. That your father didn't sell.
I begin wandering in amongst all the stuff, occasionally opening, lifting a lid on something, turning something over. I'm very clearly looking for something.
What are you doing?
I'm very clearly looking for something.
As you
And
stated.
I continue what I'm doing until I find, kind of underneath a couple other things, I find a somewhat unremarkable looking stone box. It's got some very, very basic carvings in it on the sides of it. And I just sort of unceremoniously move the stuff off to the sides. And I go to until I get to this box, and I pull the lid off of it and rummage around inside. There's a few odds and ends in there. Most of them, I would say, are bits of leather and a couple of crude carvings in rock that look very much like they were done by a child. And that's exactly what they are. These are some of the things that Sergei had taught Katya how to make when he was teaching her. I rummage around in the box for a moment, and then I find what I'm looking for. And it's a bundle about maybe 10 inches long, wrapped in a like a oilcloth. I flip the oilcloth back just a little bit to make sure that it is what I think it is. Turn around. I'm taking this. This is mine.
One of the two dwarves that kind of flanks this obviously rich proprietor kind of puts his hand on the hilt of a very broad sword on his on his hip, and kind of takes a step forward. And the man kind of puts out a multi-ringed finger or hand kind of out on his chest and just shakes his head.
I just stare at him for a moment. Oh, sorry.
You may have it, with my blessings.
I look around at everything. I hope you find the wealth you are looking for. I have what I want. And without further comment to him, I just turn and push past Sabino, Sarun, and Darian, heading towards the chain yard.
As you kind of push past, he kind of calls, his voice kind of echoing down this stone hallway after you. For what it is worth, I am sorry for the actions of your father. No one should have their clan hall sold out from under them.
She doesn't say anything. She's got other things on her mind.
I thank this dwarf for his time and understanding. And then I will excuse myself and follow Katvarad.
The group of you leaves the Kybrik clan hall and makes your way back through the almost labyrinthine kind of streets and courtyards, stairways, buildings, elevators that form the heart of Tolmunymir. You make your way closer and closer to the edge horizon itself, the edge of the city, the edge of the world. And you come to a place that has the markings of the cycles of life and death. The statues here have the visages of Colossiahs skulls instead of dwarven faces. Several of them hold what look like dwarves in the palms of their hands, depicting the various cycles. You approach this area known as the Chain Yard. This area is a flat, open expanse that looks out over the edge horizon, and you can see beyond the edge horizon the entirety of the Sea of Stars, stretching for infinity beyond your world. You see these large columns of placed stone and realize some of them have the finger bones of a Colossiah rising up out of them. On these finger bones there are rings of metal, easily the girth of a dwarf. And off of each of these rings is a multitude of chains. And these chains, these large, heavy chains with each link about the size of a fist, run off in a straight line, almost taut as if there were tension on them, off of the edge of the world and into this sea of stars. At the end of each one of these chains is a dwarven corpse. Gotharad, you know, when a dwarf dies, their body is put through this process known as mooring. They're floated out in chains over the edge horizon amongst the sea of stars in a process that slowly mummifies them. After a period of time, when this mummification is complete, they're pulled in. Their mummy is then placed in their death hall, where funds providing, they are served, bathed, clean, fed, and on special occasions, festivals and the like, the family comes and visits them, bringing them gifts and dining with them. If your mother is not in her death hall, the likelihood is that she is still here, and that your father never claimed her.
I would begin immediately looking for anyone who might be in charge, some way to know which chain holds my mother.
It's not long before you can spot several of the priests that serve this duty in particular. And you're directed to, a high priest who can tell you where your mother is located. He approaches you, and you can see that he actually seems to be wearing Colossiah bone and is kind of carved into this decorative pattern. His face is kind of shrouded in the shadow of a part of this skull, decorated with chain. And he walks up to you and says, "You have come to claim your body, yes?"
Yes.
It's only right.
My mother was never claimed. Please tell me she is here.
What is your mother's name, child? Oops.
What is my mother's name?
You can just say it. That's fine.
I was trying to
I don't know.
bring up the document. I don't know if I had
I
said
don't know
what
if it
her
actually
name
has
was.
been identified. Ms. Kybrek?
Yeah, I don't see it here. So very well then. Her name was Mariah Kybrek.
There's a slight nod from beneath the canopy of this kind of piece of skull. And he turns and moves over to a very large book. This kind of tome that is probably 8 inches thick. And he reaches up and pulls it open with a kathod. And as it kind of thuds open, you can see these pages are filled with the names of the dwarves of Tolmunymir, going back thousands of years. He flips towards the back and starts to kind of mark the page as he draws his finger down. And then he realizes that it's not one of the most recent. He flips the page backwards. And then another. Oh. See, she has been here for some time.
Yes.
Well, please follow me. He kind of closes the book and then starts to make his way over towards one of these finger spires. He then calls over a collection of these acolytes, and they move forwards under his direction to grab one of these large chains and begin to hand over hand on these links and pull, almost as if fishing. I would imagine Darian might kind of see a parallel. As they pull in the bundle on the end of this chain. Soon, Kakarad, you know that you will be in the possession of your mother's corpse. Before it arrives, anything that goes through your mind, is there anything that you say or do?
To the others, Kathrad is antsy. Foot tapping, maybe drumming a hand on the hip. Kind of rocking in place, biting the lower lip. Blinking back. Tears that seem to want to come despite her trying to fight them back.
And I think Sabanos would be sort of sniffing these strange ritual dusts and all whatever's there. Just these, vials, casks, powders and things like that. Like maybe tasting a thing or two and sort of like smelling mummies and just sort of like figuring out, maybe even talking a little bit to people who aren't even listening. Just be like, yeah, so you're doing okay. That interesting. And then the chemical process would talk. And then he finds the dust and he goes, ha ha ha. Maybe he takes a sniff, like a bump off his pinky of some of this stuff. Like who knows what's going on?
I think Haroon probably wouldn't say anything, but would just rest a calming, reassuring hand on Kafarod's shoulder.
I think Darian would be similarly somber to Haroon. He'll just kind of stand to the side, just sort of looking on, not knowing what to do or what to say, or if there is even such a thing as something that would help in this scenario. Can't really understand what Kadfarad is doing or going through in any sort of meaningful way. So we'll just sort of watch, not knowing what to do to make anything better.
She begins to nervously bite at her nails. And then she turns to the others standing around her. There's something I've never told any of you. And the only one who knew it besides my father was Ingvarad. The reason my mother is here, and the reason I ultimately left, my mother is dead because of me. I killed my mother. It was an accident. It was not something that Sergei had taken to the ether. More and more, his hands were growing shakier, and he had grown paler. And I was only just beginning to see what it was. My eyes were opening to what was happening in the world around me. And I saw Sergei was being taken over by this addiction. But Sergei was also trying to help me to understand the shadow power that I had come into contact with on one of my delves. We didn't know what it was. And I thought he was going to be able to help me to understand it and maybe control it. And Mother, I tried to talk to her when I understood about Father's addiction. And every time I tried to tell her about it and talk to her about it, she would stop me and say that she had it under control. And I thought she didn't know Sergei as well as I did. I thought foolishly that she couldn't know what I knew. She couldn't see what I saw. And I tried to take his hidden stash of ether. And I was going to throw it out into the endless expanse of stars where he could never get to it. And she came running up and tried to stop me, and she was angry, and I was angry. And as she charged at me to take the ether from me, I put out my hand and I saw the flash of shadow and smoke. And where I held up my hand, suddenly Mother's eyes, they grew wide. And I looked down and I saw the spear that had formed in my hand. And I saw where it went through her. And I saw the look of confusion and fear in her eyes. And then, before I knew it, the spear had dissipated. And I sat there. I stood there and watched as my mother collapsed to the ground. And Sergei, I thought he was too high to understand what had happened, but I don't know how he dealt with it. And maybe he never fully dealt with it, as she is still here. But I couldn't stay after that. That is why I left Sonia, and that is why I left here. And I left my father. And I went to stay with Ingvarad. I need you all to know this. I don't know why, I just needed you to know this.
Darian will walk up to Katvarad and just pull her into a hug. I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's a lot for anyone to go through, especially someone so young. I know what it feels like to feel like your past has things in it that shouldn't be spoken or that you should be ashamed of. I know you didn't ask, but I just want to say it because I know I would worry if I were you. I still accept you. You're still a part of this team. You're a family to us and an honored member that I'm proud to have along with us. Nothing of what you just said changes any of that for me, and I'm sure for the rest of us.
As you're embracing her and start talking, Darian, you would feel her tense up at first. And as you start talking, you would feel the tension sort of release a little bit. And then at first, with balled up fists, one hand still clutching whatever this oil cloth wrapped item is, but she would slowly return the hug and begin just quietly sobbing into your shirt for just a moment. And she wouldn't let go after a moment. She would sort of let go with one arm, but stay sort of close to you, wiping at her eyes and just turning to look out as the priests pull in the chain with her mother attached.
You know, Katvarad, that it is far too often we feel that we must carry the sins of our parents. This is not true. This is not our burden. And you had mentioned that your father was a master craftsman. I would ask that you understand that everything changes with time. Even stone. Look around you. Even something as hard as stone changes over time. And your father and your mother, they were masters of their craft, for their greatest craft stands here before us. But it is not finished. It is still taking shape. It is still molding through time and experience. So I understand the weight that you feel of taking another's life. And it's hard to forgive yourself of something of this magnitude, especially with one so close as a parent. But you must, as he kneels down and he cups Kavrod's hand holding this item that she has taken from the death hall, like cupping her hand and then pushing as she's holding this to her chest, to her heart. You must learn, and know that Ingvarad would want you to know this as well, but you must learn to forgive yourself, and you must learn to let this go, especially with where we are going. I hope you can make your peace.
Throughout this conversation with Katvarad, the constant sound of the links of chain clink, 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 as they slide through this massive steel ring and pull this bundle in. Eventually, the acolytes are able to retrieve the corpse of your mother and bring her onto a slab nearby. The acolyte that is attending this portion comes and stands on the other side of this altar, if you will, from you, and moves to start unwrapping the death shroud, but pauses and looks at you, Katrad, and says, "Would you like to see her?"
Yes.
He undoes the layers of this death shroud, eventually pulling back the portion covering her head and shoulders. Her hair is the only thing that remains recognizable. The rest of her face is hallowed, shrunken, dried looking. Not the first of your relatives, I imagine, that you have seen this way, but her appearance causes the acolyte to gasp audibly. Remember this body? Yes, you are not the first to come. Look here. And he kind of points with a finger, and you can see black, wispy marks crawling up her chest and shoulders and neck towards her face. The majority of them, apparently, beneath the rest of the death shroud. Are you related to Sergei the Damned?
Sergei, it's my father.
He almost falls backwards with how much he is taken aback by your answer. Forgive me. I meant no offense.
There is nothing to forgive.
Markings, they are very strange. May I? And he indicates the death shroud as if to ask if he can reveal more.
Yes.
He peels it back, revealing the funerary clothes of your mother. But in her abdomen, Katharad, the place where you stabbed her, there is an open wound that not only is in her body, but through her clothing as well. The skin, though it is dried and somewhat discolored, and that's normal, The skin in this area, and the cloth as well, are as black as soot.
I look at this acolyte. Please. Can you leave us?
Of course, yes. And he kind of turns and looks like he's thankful for the relief of duty.
I look down on Mariah Kybrick's body, not at all deterred by the appearance. I reach up and move a few strands of hair that were displaced when the shroud was removed, just brushing those strands of hair back into place across the crown of her head. And just sort of give her a wry smile and hi, Ma. It's Kitty Kid. I just had to come. And I had to say goodbye to you. I wanted to say that I am sorry. You should never have been here in this way. And you should never be here, still in this place, if not for... I was going to say if not for Father, but it's probably still my fault. But I'm trying to make things right. I am trying to do things in the world now to offset these terrible things that I did to you and Father. And I know now, thanks to my friends, I know I can't take back what happened to you and what happened to Father. But I can try to make things better for those that are still here. I'm sorry, Ma. I brought you something. And I take the oilcloth wrapped bundle and I lay it on the stone altar next to her. And I slowly unwrap it, unroll it a bit. And inside is a loose, a rather rough carving, clearly by an unskilled hand, but one that there's signs that there's untapped potential there. There's some natural skill, but it's very rough and very new. But the carving is in the likeness of Mariah Kybrick. It is a carving that Katya did as a child with her father, or as she was on the cusp of no longer being a child. I made this for you after you were gone. I sent it to Sergei. And I had the feeling I knew where he would keep it, and I am glad he kept it. It was supposed to be with you in the Kybrick death hole, where you were to be laid to rest, but that is not going to happen now. There's no money for it. And I don't want you there anyway. Not in that place. It's not what it once was. But there's something special about this statue I made for you. And don't be afraid. I have learned to control this. And I hold out my hand, and you see the black smoke with the liquid light within begin to form. But I don't form a blade or a spear. I form a hammer. A craftsman's hammer. And it's got a chisel edge on one end, and a hammer edge on the other. And I place the statue on the oilcloth, and I turn the hammer chisel side and forward. I raise my hand and I bring it down in one swift stroke, and the statue shatters. And as it does so, something gleaming is on the inside. A black, glistening rock. It is a piece of the onyx rock where I encountered the shadow that gave me the power that ultimately led to my mother's death. I know this may seem like the last thing you would want to see, but I had always hoped that maybe somehow it would bring comfort to you in the afterlife. I don't know if the priests will put you back on the chain and leave you out there, or if they will cut you loose and let you drift forever on the sea of stars. But it is better than being locked in a vault in the stone beneath a dead clan home. But take this. And I take that piece of black rock and I place it in that hole where the wound is. Goodbye, Ma. And I take the oilcloth, I make the hammer, I dismiss it. And I take the oilcloth and I sort of wrap up the pieces of broken stone and hold on to that and just step back. I turn to the others. Thank you. Thank you for letting me come here and say goodbye. Thank you for everything. I think I'm ready now. And I'll step down away from the altar.
The body of Mariah Tybrick is reshrouded. And once Kodvarad has told them what they wish to do, or what she wishes for them to do with her body, she is let back out into the sea of stars, whether with or without her chain. As you make the somber march back into the city of Tolmunymir itself to meet once again with Sonia, possibly meet these two dwarves that may have rumors that will help you along your journey. This is where we're going to take our break. So, 5 or 10 minutes, go to the bathroom, refill your drink, smoke them if you got them, kiss your spouse, etc., etc. Thank you so very much so far, everyone. Especially thank you, Jake, for, again, bringing just such weight and gravitas to the scenes with this kind of emotion for Kodvarad. So yeah, if you're watching so far this evening, thank you so much. I'm very excited to get to the second part of what we have tonight. So sit tight, and we will be right back. Hello, everyone. Welcome back from the break. This is session number 21 of Whispers and Fragments. We are in the world of momentum and at the edge of that world, where things have gotten a little heavy. Katvarad has just said goodbye to what remains of her mother. And our heroes have now gone back into the city of Tolmunymir, this dwarven citadel, meeting with Sonia once again. She informs you that there are two dwarves that she has fairly reliable information on, that supposedly have rumors, information that the current Chemos, the head king of the dwarves, was involved in the delve made by the Throes of Sunset, the cult that our heroes now follow on the heels of. The two dwarves that she is willing to put you into contact with, one of them is the quartermaster of delves here in Tolmunymir. His name is Lazia, and he has agreed to meet you at a bathhouse. The second is a dwarf by the name of Moshak, and he is a craftsman. He makes girdles and belts and leather goods out of fiend hides, and there is supposedly something about the last batch of things he made, these costumes that he made for this ritual game of Tantiok that was played before the delve was allowed to go. And it supposedly has some ill bearings for the Chemos. And he is willing to meet you at his shop. So of the two of those, where would you guys like to go?
Who do you think would give us the best information? I'm talking to Haroon and Darian and Sabanos. For what it's worth, I wonder about this maker. The costumes he made could be very important and very incriminating. I'm not super thrilled about the idea of meeting an old dwarf in his bathhouse. But that's my opinion.
Jeremy, how long has it been since we've had an opportunity to have a bath?
That's a great question. It's probably been some time. I would imagine that maybe while you guys were at sea, maybe there was a point where you might have taken a dip, but I mean, that's kind of...
Didn't Sabanos fall in the river when we were fighting those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so to clarify, that's not a river. That's fetid swamp water. So if that's the last time you were submerged, then you're probably nice and ripe.
And so at the mention of a bathhouse, so Sabanos is processing all this information, running odds, listening to, well, what is the question here? What do we have a better chance with, and kind of all this, and then everything goes bathhouse, and he goes, the bathhouse, surely the bathhouse.
I would defer to Darius and Sabnos on this. I clearly have some experience in these types of brokering of information.
Looks like that makes you the tiebreaker, Darian.
What kind of think? How badly do you not want to meet this dwarf at the bathhouse?
It's not that big a deal. Just remember that I warned you when you see what you're going to see in the bathhouse. You can wash your body, you can't wash your eyes. That's all.
And I feel like Sabanos would say, of course you can't wash your eyes. You can wash your eyelids and around it, but that'd be ridiculous. Who would want to get soap in their eyes? It doesn't make any sense. But yes, the bath. I can wash my body, as you say.
Sabanos, never change.
He's been like this as long as I know him. I don't think he can.
All right, well, to the bathhouse then. Ah, crap. That means I have to... I hate knowing where everything is in this city. Let's go. And once again, I will lead everybody reluctantly to a different location.
You managed to lead them through to somewhat of a nicer part of town, a little higher up. You managed to find your way to the bathhouse there. You make your way in. You are kind of divided, one side for the males, one side for the females, and you prepare yourselves, dress down to whatever your comfort level is. There's plenty of dwarves who are apparently very comfortable with nothing, and then you are kind of led into kind of a common area. There's a large square, kind of rectangular, probably, stone pool that you can see the water is superheated. The steam fills this room. It's so humid and thick in here that it's almost an effort to breathe. And you can see, but not very far in here, maybe 30 feet out away from you or so, before the haze gets so thick and dense in here that it's just kind of a white fog. You find your way around to asking, a dwarf here or there, an attendant, to this dwarf known as Lazia. He sits on the edge of this steaming water. The light from many torches kind of streaming down through this steam, forming these kind of shafts of light. He wears a towel around his lower half and sits with his arms resting on his knees and his hands interclasped. as you approach, he takes a second towel and wipes off the back of his mostly shaved head and neck and looks at the grouping of you. Are you the friends of Sonia?
We are.
Please have a seat. Kind of like gestures to the stone beside him.
I imagine coming in having Kotvarad having stripped down to small clothes. And at some point probably would have given the others, regardless of what level they were going to strip down to, would have shown them where the towels are and handed out maybe a couple little things. That I just picture there being these like vials with oils and lotions and soaps and whatnot, and just kind of handing one to each of them, and then looking at Sabanos and giving him another one and another one, and here, try this one. You might want a little bit of this, all before we got here. So at this point, Kotvarad's not necessarily the word's escaping me now, modest, but has just stripped down to small clothes. So and does use her towel just to sort of sit down next to this gentleman.
And I feel like Sabanos is not even, there's not really modesty or not. It's just bathing and not bathing. It's just like the human form. Like, who cares? Like, clothes are stupid anyway. But so he just kind of, does his thing. Absolutely using all the vials and testing different ones and mixing them and trying different things out and submerging himself and going under the water and sort of like backstroking, just not even really paying attention to anyone doing anything of import, but rather having quite a lovely bath.
I imagine Sabanos is completely and totally oblivious to the people that he's kind of annoying with his Olympic-style sprawls through the pool as they're like trying to relax and bathe. Kind of like that kid at the public pool who has no clue that anybody else is in the water with him.
Yes. 100% yes.
Yep. Okay. Those of you who wish to swim, bathe, take a seat, whatever it is that you wish to do, are unfettered. So you're able to find whatever it is that you would like to do to relax. Godfather, you take a seat down next to Lazia. And he kind of looks around to make sure that there's not any prying ears or eyes that are too close. You've come for information about the latest delve.
We have.
These dwarves, they were strange. They had bones grafted onto them, jutting out of places in their skulls, their shoulders and backs. There was a human woman seemed to be in charge. They took orders from her. They had a lot of crates that they took with them. Many, many, many crates. Heavy crates. I got a look inside of one of these crates. I don't know for certain what it was that I saw, but it was bone, and it was big. I think it may have been Colossiah bone.
I'm looking at the others. And this is me, player intrusion. Did we know that they were taking the Colossiah bones down with them? Or is this new
Yes.
information?
Yeah.
We did. And
Okay. What can you tell us about this human woman?
She was large, even for a human woman. Almost bonekin size. She had dark skin, and her hair was orange, like fire. She had finery, lots of jewelry, nice armor, nice weapons. You know, this was all strange. Human leading a delve into the down under, it's not done. I took this information to the chemos. Paid me my weight in gold to be quiet. Turned me away. My weight in gold. Kind of levels a second time.
And what if you were paid your weight in gold to be quiet? Why are you willing to talk now?
Kind of looks around again. It was not right. Something about this delve, it felt off, wrong somehow. Cannot sleep at night ever since. I believe the chemos is not fit to rule any longer.
Would you be willing if we are able to provide this sufficient evidence of his betrayal, are you willing to come forward and set this right?
He kind of looks over you and your group. His eyes kind of settle on Bustrod. You agree for the time until things are made right that you will protect me? Then yes. I will swear to this.
I would look over at the others. Anything else that we need? That I don't normally do this kind of thing. It's usually one of you guys that's asking more questions. So I might, if there's anything I didn't cover, please.
Okay. With the conversation seemingly at its end for the time being at least, Lazia will make his excuses and depart, heading back into the changing room. The rest of you are able to finish bathing, lounging around here if you'd like. Before you move on to whatever may be next. You wish to try to meet with this second dwarf, or do you wish to try to bring this information to Sonia and see what can be done with it? Is there something else you wish to do?
What do you think about meeting with this maker? I mean, we have one promise of testimony, but is that going to be enough?
And Sabanos would be at this point one pinky in the ear, sort of drying off the equivalent of flip-flopped and changed after having showered from the pool. Just like totally carefree, like, oh, yes. Certainly, we can meet the other dwarf, or we can take this information that seems very important to whoever would be interested. Looks like we're indebted to that gentleman, which is kind of scary, a little bit. Not the end of the world. I saw a scar. We could probably, but it's whatever you want to do. All of you. I have what I want.
I'm conflicted. On one hand, time is of the essence here, and we do need to get moving. But if it would be a roadblock to only have one person who can back up our story, and a second would get us clearance, then it'd be foolish not to take the time.
I agree with Darian in the sense of obviously this is a matter of great urgency, but if it will help our case to have more information, then I think it's best to find out what this other dwarf knows.
All of a sudden, we get to Tolmunymir. I can't say my own city's name. I just closed the window that had the name written out.
A few too many martinis.
We get into my home. And all of a sudden, I have to make all of the decisions.
And Savanos takes a couple stabs at it, like, with fervor. Telavinados, Telemanidar, Tula, Valia. He's just like in love with his own words, like whatever.
Tolmunymir. I think that's right.
Of course, that's right. That's what I said. I said it about like 3 times in a row.
Anyway, I'm just thinking if we go to Sonia with this one dwarf and his promise to back up the claim, and then he doesn't come through, we are left with nothing. If we have 2 and one falls through, we have a fall back. He says that for our protection, he will give testimony, but he also took payment in a very large amount of gold, to say nothing, and has spoken to us. So there's that. So if you're going to leave it to me, I say we go talk to the maker. We don't have to take a bath with him and spend a bunch more time. So we can have a quick conversation with him.
You do bring up a good point that if this first man will take payment for silence and then take protection for speech, he seems opportunistic. If he can be bought once and then bought again twice, a third time is very possible. If he's asking for protection, that means he knows that there are people who he'll need it from. I think a second aid be a good trump card.
All right, so let's go find this chop and see what he can tell us. And once again, I will lead us into what is probably incredibly fresh air.
Yes.
Less stifling.
Mm-hmm. So you lead once more across Tolmunymir, and you find yourself in a less affluent part of town. This is definitely much more the area that is lived in by the craftsmen and the masons. Again, through a few different dwarves giving you directions, you manage to make your way to the shop of Moshak Bob. Now I'm doing it. Moshak Mobku. He is a rather intimidating fellow himself. Large, barrel-chested. His beard is very wide. A scar runs from the crown of his head on one side down through his eyebrow, through his milky white eye, and down his cheek to where his beard begins. He is a stone statue of a dwarf. And as you enter his shop, you can smell the tannins, the chemicals that are being used to treat the fiend leather that he is crafting. And there's a smell of brimstone faint in the air as well. You enter, and a makeshift brass bell that is hung by the door hits on the corner of it and rings as you enter. He comes from the back and looks at all of you. Are you here to purchase something?
Information.
He kind of nods. You are Sonia's friend.
I am. Kotvarat.
I know your father, Sergei, before he was what they call him now. He was a gifted artisan. Please, come in. He kind of makes his way around from the counter to the door, where he shuts it and locks it behind the last of you. You've come for not just any information. This information is sensitive. It's dangerous. More so, what you intend to do with it, I think. If you do indeed seek to dethrone the Chemos, then simply by me talking to you, I am in danger already. Can you make it worth my while?
The potential for dethroning is more a side effect, to be completely honest. But regardless of our intentions, which you seem to already have some sense of, yes, we can.
I am going to just double checking to make sure. Where did it go? I am going to, I think I still have this. That horn of, what was it? A horn of brimstone is basically what it was, right? That I was given so long ago.
Yeah, powder horn.
Yeah, the powder horn. That's the word I was looking for. I will dig into my leather pack, and it's kind of pushed down inside. Obviously, it's not something I would want to keep on the outside, but I will reach in and pull out what is a mostly full powder horn, and I will set it on the counter in front of him.
He picks it up and inspects it, and opens the top of it and kind of wafts it under his nose. Brimstone. Okay. We can talk. He kind of like puts the cap back on it and tucks it underneath the counter. It's my job to make the girdles worn by the athletes who compete In the Tantiok, right. I was instructed to make the ones for the last delve that was sanctioned. Kimos' man himself came and had these made. He kind of goes over to a barrel in the corner and moves it out of the way and pulls up a sack that is fiend leather, but looks like it's soaked with dried blood. And he pulls up this sack and kind of sets it on the counter and reaches inside and pulls out a girdle that is finely crafted, but it is stamped with the faces, the claws and scales and wings and tails of horrendous looking, terrifying fiends. This was worn by each of the Tesnichi players, those that represent the fiends in the games. They are not normal girdles. See, whenever I made them, I was paid to put a curse on them. The games were rigged by the Kimos.
That is a very serious thing to have done, to influence the contest in that way.
Please.
I mean, you could definitely see, the others would see that Katvarad, this is having trouble on processing this. This is like a big deal, like an entire part of the culture that's just been tainted. These rituals are such an important part of the delving.
You just got to an age where you realized that professional wrestling wasn't real. You talked about Katvarad maturing, so you just realized
It's real to me, damn
It's
it!
that final
Right?
moment.
dwarven
That's the
Vince
moment-
McMahon comes walking out.
That's the moment you truly become an adult, when you realize
That's it.
wrestling is fake.
That's it. And that just happened.
What the hell are you talking about, Jeremy?
Surprise, Jake.
This is Sonia has presumably told you what we are trying to do, then you know this. Will you, if we go forth with this and are able to confirm this treasonous act, will you come forth as a witness?
He kind of strokes this large beard just at the chin. It will take more than simply brimstone. But if you are willing to pay, then I will talk.
I mean, I could just kind of look over at Darian. I mean, yeah, we can pay.
Looking at Rich Uncle Darian.
How much?
Say 500 silver pieces.
I'll kind of think for a second. While that might be a lot for a lot of people, for us it's not. But Darian doesn't want to give away that we might have access to a lot more funds than we might appear to have. So we'll kind of pretend to think for a moment and kind of look like, should we not, before we'll kind of settle. Yes, we can do that.
All right. Then I will talk for you whenever the time comes. You like to keep these? Or would you like for me to bring it with me? And he kind of indicates the girdle.
We'll take that with us.
No one else knows, so it should be safe to carry with you. But I would not put it on.
Already, I'm, regardless of what he says about being safe, I'm pushing it down into my already open pack. Thank you.
If what your plan is with Sonia, then I am glad for it, but should be careful. Stripping Akimos of his titles, his name is no small thing. And he unlocks the door and opens it.
All right. I look at the others. I think we need to go talk to Sonia and see about dethroning a king.
This one will be a first even for me. It's kind of exciting in a way.
Okay. You make your way back to where Sonia agreed to meet you. Probably the same alehouse that you met at before. And she listens to what it is that you have to tell her about this situation. And we're gonna do this part narratively. So there is a tribunal that is called Every Dwarf in Tolmunymir turns out for this hearing, essentially. The Chemos, the current ruler of Tolmunymir, is a dwarf by the name of Nakaral Ajalak. He is a rather impressive dwarf who has accumulated an immense amount of wealth and power over more than a century that he has been the Chemos of this city. Sonia brings forth the evidence that you have uncovered before this panel, this jury, if you will. With the testimony from both of these dwarves and the evidence that has been presented, they do not deliberate for long before the Chemos is announced as stripped of his name and his titles. And he, from the grave, the chain yard, is pushed off the edge into the sea of stars beyond, without a tether. He's not floated even out of sight before you can already see the mummification process taking hold of his form. The further away he gets, the more drastic and quicker it comes on. He's not even far enough away to dampen the noise of his bones snapping as his limbs atrophy. And he floats away into a twisted nothingness. Immediately afterwards, Sonia is crowned the new Chemos of Tolmunymir. There's a brief coronation ceremony that is held, and immediately, upon receiving her ceremonial mace that represents her power, in the white robes that represent purity, she is crowned Chemos, which you know means in Dwarven unstained. As soon as her coronation is finished, she immediately calls for the ritual of Tantiok. This rite, this religious ceremony / sport, will determine if the party's delve will be sanctioned by the crown or not. On the eve of this game, there is no shortage of fanfare. Ritual is being performed all around you. Formal costumes, formal parades, sacrifices are being made, all with somewhat of a somber air to the celebration. Katvarad, you know that potential delvers typically undergo ritualistic scarification and or piercing before they make a delve, as a personal sacrifice to appease the Colossiahs. Are any of you doing this, observing this tradition? And if so, please describe that.
I would describe this to everyone, and then I would say to them, this is a long honored tradition for the dwarfs and for delving. If you will not like to do this, I will take your modification on. And I'm basically offering to take a scar or piercing for myself and for each of them if they don't want to.
Yes, absolutely. Put me down for that. She'll do mine. She'll maybe even 2 for me for good luck. That's wonderful. Yes.
It is not the elven way, but as I have told you, Catherot, everything changes, even stone. I will do this.
I'd be honored to take part.
I don't want to talk for Bastarad, but I'm going to talk for Bastarad. I kind of feel like he would probably take it on as well.
Probably.
He would
let Austin
probably
confirm that, but
he would probably try to stop me from taking on the other one, but so I will, just to sort of show them the process, I will tell the person that is going to I imagine these are priests that are administering
absolutely.
these, and I explained that I am taking a piercing for myself and for Sabanos, and I am going to have pieces of, I imagine it's some kind of an alloy of the various precious metals um, that are mined. And essentially what I'm going to have done is across in a, it's a type of piercing that involves more than just piercing the flesh. It involves them having to drill through bone as well, to have piercings placed on the across the bridge of the nose, um, and essentially create from these two piercings a slightly smaller one up top, a slightly longer one, and it will create a very small but subtle diamond shape out of this alloy metal, creating this sort of permanent bridge piercing.
Haroon or Darian, do you guys want to describe what yours looks like?
I think for Haroon, he would basically like remove his shirt, and when he does so, you can already see, like, though he's still basically majority flesh, but you can already see that he does have um some already, like, I don't want to necessarily say scarring, and they're not tattoos, but maybe more like ley lines of ether, of these like light blue ether trails that kind of go like down his back and across his chest, just kind of like outlining his musculature. Um, it's pretty normal for these ether elves as they age and begin to ascend that their body just begins to break down that way. But he would ask that in dwarven runes, if he would put all of the names of the companions just down his back, starting at the top, at the base of the neck with Ingvarad, and work its way down. And as they begin to, and no ink either, basically he tells them they don't need to use any ink, so they almost like, not a scalpel, but something that's just sharp that will break the skin. And as they do so, it breaks the skin, and then this ether begins to basically glow through where the skin is touched. So these runes shine through the flesh.
Yeah, that's awesome. The kind of some of the edges where these cuts have been made, there's this almost like when you burn wood to the point where it can literally just kind of flake off as light ash and like drift away. That's kind of what the edge of some of these things looks like. These carvings looks like on your skin, Haroon. That's awesome. Hell yeah.
When Darian goes to get his done, I imagine he'll be gone for like a much longer time than the others, to the point where they might wonder where he went. But when he comes back, we'll see that where before both of his sleeves were down, one on the right covering the mark of the kraken that he had received. When he returns, both of them are rolled up, and between the right arm with the mark of the kraken, his left will be similarly tattooed and marked in the way that it will almost form this mural across the two of his arms, where on one end is this strange marking of this tentacled beast and the weird shapes and marks that come from that. Or on the left, there is what starts off as like the shore of the ocean going up across a beach. And on the arm, there's a man cloaked who has his back turned to the tentacled beast, looking away from it and like away into the distance on this tattoo so that you can't see his face, as he will scorn one arm in favor of the other, quite literally turning away from his destiny in tattoo form. As this man will be depicted now on his left arm across the whole thing. The sleeve, it'll quite literally be like a tattoo sleeve that'll cover like most of his forearm, and going up onto his bicep of the sky, the sand, this man, and then the ocean, where you can see like bits of the mark that almost seem to flow from the sea itself, where it meets with the other arm to form the rest of the proper kraken mark. And he'll keep both sleeves rolled up now, displaying the mark and the tattoo both with some semblance of pride, acceptance, both. It's maybe difficult to say.
Fantastic. Those of you who wish to do so, go through this process, this religious experience, almost a part of the fanfare, a part of the celebration. But again, celebration it doesn't quite feel like the right word. There's a sullen attitude that seems to be behind all of this, as if, yes, this is a festival, but at the same time, almost everybody seems to look at you with pity, knowing where you're going and likely what you might face. So, as we are running low on time, we're going to save the rite itself, the ritual of Tantiak, until next session. But I did prepare something for it, so I at least want to show you. Next time,
Oh, that's amazing.
we will actually play this out. It will be combat.
Oh, I love that.
Ish, if you will. And I'm really excited to get to that. So that's how we're going to kick off our next session. So sorry that we couldn't get to that tonight, but God, these guys, the nerve. I mean, they roleplay their characters and talk, and no, I'm just kidding. No, I love it. I eat up with a spoon. You guys did a phenomenal job yet again today. There was a lot of really heavy-hitting stuff, and you guys didn't miss it.
I appreciate that not knowing how deep we were going to get into it, but knowing that in Katrad's hometown and with the things she was facing, that there were things that she had to deal with. And it always feels weird when you're at the center of, dominating the story. But in a story as long as ours, we've all got arcs that have been playing out. And it was really cool to get to see Katya kind of put a cap on some of those things that she's been carrying around for a long time. And like I said during the break, actually, we were off stream, but it felt like the sort of one of the final steps of, shedding those last remnants of innocence and childhood naivete and sort of coming into adulthood. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really happy that that we were able to bring some closure into some of the stuff that's been a thing for 2 years now. It's always very, very gratifying. Cool. Well, like I said, that's everything that I'm going to put you guys through this evening. I'm going to pass things back over to you guys so you can plug whatever you'd like, give an outro, etc. And then we'll call it an evening. So we'll just go in reverse order and start with Jeff.
Yes, I'm Jeff. As mentioned before, one part of Tabletop Terrors alongside of Tim. So please give that stuff a check if you want to. Yeah, I feel like I just say it every single time we end one of these sessions, but this game is just one of the best ever. Just the level of detail that all the characters have and the way that everyone brings them into it is just second to none on the level of like interaction and like character that we managed to get. And this is like always such a treat. Just getting to even just sit back as a player and just watch someone else's character like unfold in a brand new way with new information and like new aspects to them. It's a treat. And obviously the rest of the game exceptionally well run. As always. Very excited to get into this little game we'll get to play now that I've been thoroughly teased by the little board that Jeremy showed for it. So yeah, can't wait to see what comes in next time.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, most of my games are very heavy theater of the mind. I run very fluffy games. Next time there's going to be a lot of crunch, at least up front. So yeah, I'm very eager to get to that. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I've got some interesting, I hope, ideas for it, and hopefully they play out. But always glad to have you here, Jeff, and I can't echo what you've said enough. The five of you, Austin included, obviously, every single time. I love coming up with stuff and bringing it to you guys because I know you're going to do wonderful things with it, even if I try to cram too much onto your plate when I do that. All right, next up we have Alan.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Hanging out with you guys, always a blast. Sad that it's always just once a month. But yeah, I will. I won't take up too much time, but I will say one. My hat goes off to Jake for, taking center stage. Very excellent role play. Definitely. I mean, I felt like every character has a spotlight session. This was obviously one for Kevrod, and I think he did it very well. Felt a lot of the emotion. Got to hear some of her backstory and how she came onto this journey and how it's come full circle. So that was excellent, just to be just listening and hearing this come out of the character and not have it some expose. Jeremy, always excellent. The art, the soundtrack, your descriptions, the NPCs that you put out there, whether it's a one shot or a campaign, I always just feel so immersed in the setting of the world that you're trying to portray. And I think that just really helps bring out the role play as far as me as a player. I feel so immersed that like it just is easy for me to just put myself there and become a part of the world that you're putting out before us. So all that being said, and yeah, next session with the mini game. I love how like you create these games within the game, and they're always fun. I think this is probably the fourth mini game, so to speak, that I've got to play in one of your games, and they're always very fun and unique versus just like standard D&D flavored combat stuff. So I'm very much looking forward to that next time. And thank you so much for having me, and can't wait to play again.
Thank you, Alan. I sincerely appreciate that, man. The note about immersion is a huge compliment to me, and I appreciate it sincerely. As well as the one about the minigame. And yeah, I'm hanging on to that one, that you enjoy the minigames, because I'm really hoping that plays out next time. Okay, yeah, next we have Tim.
I am Tim. I'm part of Tabletop Terrors. I'm also part of Absolute Tabletop. And as we mentioned, if you're interested in learning how to design games, check out the Tabletop Terrors Patreon. And as proof that we know at least a little bit what we're doing, we actually just published this thick book. It is in the process of being proofed right now. I'm going to take it and I'm going to read it for days and days and find out what's going on in here. But this is just proof that we know how to manage projects. We understand how to, manage budgets, show you how to get a bunch of writing done. And, being real candid, what happens when you bite off more than you can chew and you have to be late with a project? How do you handle it in a good way? We'll teach you all that stuff. So check out the Patreon.
Absolutely.
And real quick, I was just going to say, as someone who's the newest to this game, it's been a joy because it has allowed me I get that pleasure of seeing the arc completed. So I haven't had to wait as long. I've caught some of the sessions, so I get the idea. So I feel like I'm getting this awesome, like abridged version of these amazing character arcs. And just as a testament to kind of talking about the immersion you mentioned, Jeremy, it doesn't feel like these are strange characters. Even though you're talking about things that I might not have been a part of, you do such a good job with context and role playing and situations that I don't need to have seen the last episode. I don't need to have seen anything else. I get it. And that's just great storytelling. So love it, man.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate that, man. Yes, and please do go check out, like I said, everybody who's mentioned a project or a channel, please do go check them out. Support them where you can. They're fantastic people. Okay, yeah. So speaking of fantastic people, last but certainly not least, my brother from another mother, Jake.
Well, I'm just going to ditto what everybody said so far. I mean, it's just incredible to be a part of this. I was thinking about this while the others were talking, and sometimes it's hard to think of this as quote unquote just a game. I feel like with your games, Jeremy, this type of game in particular, it feels very much like we're on this sort of improvisational, experimental, guided theater experience. This is theater of the mind in the truest sense. And I know many of us here have theater backgrounds, have acting backgrounds. And I feel like that's kind of what this is. It makes it that much more so easy to get into these roles and be these characters for a couple hours, once a month, but for the last couple of years. And it genuinely felt cathartic to role play those scenes out tonight of Katja Katvrad sort of closing her arc and facing some things that she would never have been able to face these things sooner. If we had come here, at a midway point in the journey, this would have been an entirely different experience because she had a lot of growing up to do. And it was really neat just to see through all of the different people we've had, the different characters and the influence of Kelp and Ingvarad, and then even with Sabanos, being the new kid, so to speak. But like Darian said, they've all become this sort of dysfunctional family. I added the dysfunctional, but they've all become this sort of dysfunctional family. That made it that much easier, I think, for Katvarad to say goodbye to what should have been a more devastating thing, leaving behind an ancestral home. But this was it's just so cathartic as a person to as a player, to just come into these sessions and knowing we get to escape for a few hours together. We trust one another to go on these journeys together, and you make it that much more that much easier to do, Jeremy, because like the other said, just everything that you set up for us. You're the director, you're the stage manager and the set director and the scenic artist. You provide us with all of this stuff and let us just riff off of that and create in this world. And I'm just now getting that feeling of when you're reading or what you've realized has become one of your favorite books, and you realize you're on those last few chapters and you're going to have to end that book. You don't know how it's going to end, but you're going to have to end it. And I'm already anticipating that sense of almost like loss when you finish a really excellent story and you realize you're no longer in that story. And there's a bit of sadness to that, but it's so exciting to have been on this journey together for this long, and to have that. This is something I've never experienced as a player. I've never played through a long running campaign like this. And so to be able to experience this with this group is just phenomenal. So thank you, Jeremy, and thank you everybody else. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Oh, tune in on Thursdays for to see me DM Jeremy and some other wonderful role players in Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden season 5, coming up in just a couple weeks after. We're running a special edition. If you're watching this live, or even if you're not, the VOD will be up later on YouTube. But we're actually letting V, the Crafting Muse, is taking us on an adventure of hers in a one-shot tomorrow that Jeremy and I alluded to at the beginning. V's BB's place, that's sort of this extra planar place. So we're really excited about that.
Very much so. Looking forward to playing the character that I came up with this afternoon. Thank you, Jake. I appreciate that a ton. And all of you are so fantastic with the way you play this game and how supportive and encouraging you are of what I'm doing with the story and what you guys are bringing to the story, each other. And that's, I won't go so far as to say it's rare, but it's fantastic to see. It's not something that is entirely common either, to see a group that is this closely knitted and this closely invested in one another's stories. So that makes it very easy to do things from my end, and I'm hugely appreciative of it. And I'm so happy to hear that you guys have enjoyed this campaign so far this much. And I know what you mean about the chapter kind of coming to its end, the end of the book. And it makes me very, very giddy and excited to know that you've never played through a campaign all the way to its completion, because I hope that it's a great first one, because you guys are going to be in for some harsh treatment towards the end of this campaign. So I'm glad to know that you're on board for it. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in this evening, whether you're watching live with us or whether you may be tuning in at some point in the future. It is massively appreciated. I checked right before we did the launch the game. We were at 399 subs, so we need one more sub to finally hit that 400 milestone, and I would be so happy if it happened on this game. But if not, stay lovey. But yeah, I'm excited for next month. We're going to kick things off in an exciting way, and then go to hell, because that's what we're going to do. So until then, may your dice roll high, and your snacks always be within reach.